This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Prime Spark, the podcast that brings you conversations that inspire, celebrate, and empower women over 55. The second women's revolution is here, and it is time for us to fuel a spark that will ignite your way forward, illuminate your path, and reflect your gifts in the world. Now, here is your host for Prime Spark, Sarah Hart.
Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here today. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to have us all live our happiest, most successful, fulfilled lives now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get started now. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Alison van Diggelen, whose work I greatly admire. Alison van Diggelen is a journalist, moderator, and interviewer. She's a regular contributor to the BBC World Service and has contributed to the BBC TV shows Panorama and Click TV and the NBC tech show Press Here. Her reports have appeared on PRI's The World, NPR's KQED in San Francisco, and BBC Homepage and the Huffington Post. Her interview series, Fresh Dialogues, features lively interviews with business leaders, inspiring women, and cultural icons, including Elon Musk, Julia Gillard, Padmashri Warrior, and Martin Sheen. She moderates events for the Commonwealth Club, KQED TV, the Computer History Museum, and UC Santa Cruz. She hails from Scotland and worked for consultants in London and Paris before moving to Silicon Valley in 1994. She has degrees from Cambridge University and Paisley University. Welcome, Alison. I'm so happy you're here today.
Wonderful to join you, Sarah.
So in getting started, let me ask you, do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why do you think it is that you don't?
Well, I definitely feel I'm getting older. I'm not as sharp as I once was. I'm forgetting people's names more, and I have moments of questioning myself. But I'm also a glass is half full person, and there are certain things about getting older that I love. That feeling of, I think it's around 50, where you just don't give a damn anymore. You don't really care what people think of you. You're not so self-conscious, and you're not held back by expectations of other people. You know who you are. And so I see getting older as a positive thing. And I have made a point of nurturing friendships with people a lot older than me. I have a dear friend who is 96, and she's still writing books and publishing, and we have the most fascinating philosophical conversations. And I'm in my 50s, in my mid-50s, and from her perspective, I see myself through her eyes. And I think that's a good trick if you're feeling you're getting old. Mm-hmm. Have a friend who's in their 90s because she thinks I'm a spring chicken. And that feels good.
Well, Alison, you are sort of a spring chicken. I mean, in this sense, I called it Prime Spark because we are in our prime. We have a whole adult lifetime ahead of us. We've gained those years. And so we can fully expect to live another 10, 30, 40. I don't think it's very long from now that women will be able to expect they can live into the hundreds. If we stay healthy, we're who we are now. It's a different time. So You are a spring chicken in many, many ways. And that's interesting because I have asked women that question for several years, and I get that answer. That there are aspects to getting older that we love. And one of them is sort of the sense of freedom. I am who I am. You don't like it? Tough. Yep. So that's very common, and I love it. You have done amazing interviews with people. I love listening to you. Of the interviews you've done recently, what are one or two of the ones that have most intrigued you?
Well, the most recent one I've done is very timely, very topical. I recently interviewed for Fresh Dialogues, my podcast, and also for the BBC, a Ukrainian in Silicon Valley. He's a tech leader in Silicon Valley who employs a team of people in Ukraine. And I should say employed, because last month when the war started, his team dispersed. Some of them were serving on the front lines. Some got away to Poland, got away to safety, and some are holed up in basements still. And so I was able to get his perspective of being a Ukrainian right now. And this was such an emotional, such a dramatic interview that normally for a BBC piece, I was live on the BBC on a World Service show called Business Matters. And normally I would pull out what we call the clips or the gold, the nuggets of gold from a 45-minute interview, and I would send them off to London. But in this case, it all happened so fast. I had 45 minutes of raw audio, and I just sent it to London, and they picked out some of the most dramatic pieces. And so that was a very that felt very meaningful, because I really felt I'm part of this worldwide team of journalists who are sharing insights and stories about what's really going on in Ukraine. So that felt very powerful. I've also done quite a few pieces on how the pandemic is impacting our mental health. Reports about doing telehealth, how a lot of people were not able to see therapists in person, and how telehealth works, doing what we're doing right now, Sarah, Zooming, and the pros and cons of that. And also a piece on grieving, because I talk with quite a few psychologists and grieving experts in grieving who are saying we're just at the tip of the iceberg. There is a whole pandemic under this pandemic of these people, and maybe some of your listeners, who experienced a death in their family or close friends, and they weren't able to have that closure of seeing their loved one or even attending a funeral in person. So I try to choose, as a freelancer for the BBC and having my own podcast, I try to choose what's really interesting to me. I can explore my curiosity to the nth degree, and I try to create reports and interview people with an aim of serving the listener, of educating them or helping them feel that, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person going through this. And I think that is can be a valuable thing for people.
Oh, I love listening to your interviews, and just everything you said there. I've got about 25 questions, but I'm going to try not to ask them all at the same time. So have you spoken to that tech executive since that interview? That was a remarkable interview.
Oh, thank you for listening. Yes, I have. And he's actually launched a campaign. I think it's called Support Ukraine Now. He's launched a website, and he has action items. He's trying to encourage people to write to their representatives, their state and DC representatives, to get Joe Biden to do what he and his team think is necessary to keep Putin at bay and save lives in his hometown and his his country.
Right.
So I think it's called Support Ukraine Now. I can send you the link.
Yeah, that would be.
You can put it up later. But he's gone from being a Silicon Valley tech executive to being an activist for helping Zelensky and helping the resistance to the Russian invasion going on right now.
Do you? I mean, I don't want to get clear into the Ukraine here because this is an endless topic. But can you say briefly what he thinks we should be doing that we're not doing? When you said to try to write letters to get people to what is he? What would he like us to be doing that we're not doing?
Well, one of the things, and I think it is controversial, he is saying Ukraine needs fighter aircraft, and he describes them as for defense, to stop the carpet bombing that's going on of the cities. But of course, that is controversial because if it's seen by Putin as a NATO effort backed by the US or any of the NATO countries, then, that could trigger Putin into, a nuclear conflict. So it's, I encourage listeners to get informed and read about it. But yes, it's he as a Ukrainian and seeing his native city destroyed, he wants the US to be not boots on the ground, but to be more giving of more than just drones and more than what they're giving so far. Right. But as I say, I'm not necessarily condoning that. Well, let's leave it there, maybe.
There are so many sides to this. It's
very complex. It's very complex.
Very complex.
And the other point he made is I often ask my interviewees, what would you say if you could have 5 minutes with their president? In this case, I asked him, what would you say to Putin if you could have 2 minutes with Putin? And he almost laughed in my face. He said, he's a madman. There's no rationality there. There's no negotiating with a madman. That's his point of view. I think others feel differently, and I know diplomatic efforts are still underway. And I'm hopeful that there can be a way of Putin saving face and yet backing out of Ukraine. And it looks like we're moving in that direction. He's focused on the Donbass area, so I'm hoping that there's some way of ending the continual bloodshed every day.
Well, me too. I don't see a way out, but the only way out that it seems to me that's possible, that is short of just disastrous, is negotiation, and somehow. So we need to keep doing it. So, Alison, I'm really curious. I mean, you talked about the Ukraine, you talked about the pandemic, and not all, but a lot of your interviews have to do with really significant things that are going on. And our world right now isn't full of a lot of significant things going on that are in the news. There are a lot of good, significant things going on, but they're not in the news as a generalization. So how do you stay upbeat? You say you have a half glass full view, and I do too, and have been accused of Pollyanna sometimes, but you're in the thick of it in these interviews. How do you, I mean, on the interviews that I've heard you're very serious, but you're also upbeat. How do you stay that way?
Well, I think I'm very fortunate that I'm kind of wired that way. My mom is a big optimist still. She's almost 90. And so I think part of it is your DNA. But I think we can all, no matter how we're wired, I think we can focus on the positive without, as you say, being Pollyanna-ish. And, I think it was Mr. Rogers that always said, when a disaster happens like 9/11, it's just horrifying to watch with your kids, for example. But he taught us all, adults and kids alike, focus on the emergency workers, focus on the heroes. And I think no matter what's going on, I mean, you can look at Ukraine and you can just want to cry for the rest of the day, Or you can look at all these countries like Poland that have opened their doors, and all these emergency workers who are stepping up, and the heroism of Zelensky and all his team. So I think it's being mindful of the heroes that are out there, and also to avoid that feeling of like, what can I do as a human being? Focus on what you can do in your local community, because, we can't all impact what's going on in Ukraine, but we can impact our immediate families, our friends, and, give back to the community. Another tip I would say is a media diet. When, I watch PBS NewsHour every night, and I keep up with the BBC News, but as a journalist, it's kind of ironic. I have to put myself on a media diet when something like Ukraine is going on. As soon as it says, some of these images may be disturbing, I'll fast forward. I don't want to have these images of suffering women and children, especially, in my head. And I think you can still stay well informed, but you don't have to look at all the images. You can read the stories. And the other thing that keeps me optimistic is I have 2 young adult children, and I am so full of optimism for their future and their connection with the environment, and their hard work and their idealism. And that keeps me positive. So.
Me too. I just want that generation to get in there now and start doing what they're going to be doing, because I have great hope and faith in what they're going to do. And we need them. A lot of them are doing things now. It's not like they haven't started, but at some point they're going to be more directly involved in making some of the big decisions and directions. And I'm looking forward to that time, because I think it's going to be up to them. So I like thinking of the heroes. And when I think of when you were talking about the pandemic, there were certainly a lot of heroes in that. I mean, if I think of the healthcare workers, they were amazing heroes. All of the healthcare workers were amazing. So that's a good tip, because I find myself avoiding news. I always was up to date on news. I wouldn't say a news junkie, but I always was up, and I'm not now nearly as much as I was, because I just can't. I can't do it. There's just a certain point, and okay, that's it. So I think you do have to pick and choose. So in addition to these wonderful interviews that you're doing, Alison, what else are you doing now that is most interesting, exciting for you?
Well, I would go back to my children. I actually have my son visiting right now, and his girlfriend is a healthcare worker. She's been in the ICU wards all through the pandemic. She's a traveling nurse, and that just gives me hope, talking to the young people and seeing, my son, for example, he's an entrepreneur. He is riding this wave of pent-up demand for parties, for weddings. He has his own business, the Fire DJs in Portland, Oregon. And I'm just thrilled to see how he is putting his talent and expertise and bringing joy to people. And our daughter, too, she is working. She just embarked on a 5-year PhD program, PsyD program in Palo Alto, Stanford. And just seeing her fairly regularly, because she's close by now, is just such a joy. And to keep positive, to imagine the impact that these young people are going to have in the future. When I'm dead and buried, that gives me a lot of optimism. And I think that's a good trick for listeners to, when they're feeling, because, I think we all have days where we're like, oh my goodness, it's just one thing after another. I feel like we didn't get a breather between the pandemic tailing off and then the war starting. But when we do have days like this, I think focusing on the young people in your life, whether they're your kids or other people's kids, nieces and nephews, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And looking ahead, one day I would love to write a book, a distillation of wisdom of all these amazing people that I've interviewed. People like Julia Gillard. She was the first Prime Minister of Australia, And she's famous for that, of course, but she is also famous for what's called the misogyny speech. And she was attacked, verbally attacked in the Australian Parliament, and she just snapped. And she got back at her male colleagues who were using very derogatory terms to describe her and implying that she was a loose woman, all this kind of stuff that you thought, we'd left behind in the Victorian era. And I highly recommend you Google Julia Gillard misogyny speech, because her speech is so articulate and so enthusiastic. She has inspired millions of women who've watched this to speak out when they experience misogyny or put downs or not allowed to have their voice heard in a room full of guys. And this is for women, especially in that field where they're in the minority. You may be the only woman at the table. So that kind of thing inspires me. The idea of distilling this kind of wisdom is like, how did she get the courage to speak out like that, And I'm fascinated by psychology too. And I think using some of the psychology that I've learned through my interviews, I think that could be a very interesting and kind of action-oriented book for people to read and learn from and be inspired from. Bye.
I want to order it right now. So you have to write it soon, because yeah, that will be fun to read. That's interesting when you say, I'm going to look that speech up. I want that speech. It's almost like there are times that I think we just get to the end and think, that's it. That's it. No more. And it sounds like that's what happened for her. Because
I think so. I asked
that would be a huge risk on her part. And it was almost like, from the way you describe it, I haven't read it, but from the way you describe it, it's almost like she didn't even think about what she was doing. She didn't exactly have a choice. She just had to act right then. That was it. No more.
Yes, I think so. She had not prepared this. But I think in all the abuse that she'd suffered, she had internalized it. And I think the speech was just ready to go. She's one of these people that's very, very articulate. And you can't help cheering her. It will inspire anyone who watches it.
Have you felt that as a journalist, have you felt either sexism or ageism or gendered ageism or anything in your work? Because you're in a field that you could.
Yes, I have to say I haven't. I have experienced a time as a freelancer. And this, I wouldn't say it's necessarily sexism, but I've had a door closed in my face as a journalist, and any journalist listening, they'll know this expression. It's called a kill fee. And after you get an assignment for a written, or in my case, it was a radio piece, the door was closed in my face. I worked with a new editor, and she just didn't like what I was doing. I had done a piece, and it was about Chinese entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And I'd interviewed all these young 20-something entrepreneurs and told them, you're going to be on national public radio. So they'd given up their precious time. And, for startup leaders, this is, it really was precious time. And this editor had me rewrite it 2 or 3 times and finally said, no, I'm going to give you a kill fee. And so the door was slammed in my face, and I was devastated, not so much for the work I had put into this piece, but for all these young entrepreneurs. I didn't want to let them down. And so in this case, what I did was I decided, okay, I'm going to find a home for this story. This was actually a piece for PRI, The World. And I got the kill fee from them, and I started emailing and messaging everyone I could think of, KQED, everyone. And I actually wrote to the Facebook page of the BBC World Service, and I told them I'd interviewed Elon Musk, and I've got this great story, and it's all about Chinese entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and here's why it's great. And that actually, it was a case of, my mother's mantra, one door closes, another opens. I didn't accept the door closing. I decided, okay, I'm going to batter down a door until one opens. And that actually opened this amazing career I'm now in, working for the BBC. And I think I've contributed to over half a dozen different programs on the BBC as a result of that. So my takeaway there is, even if you do experience sexism or, doors closing, sometimes, you got to push back on that person, if it is a true sexist comment or an ageist comment. But sometimes the answer, you can repackage it or reframe it as a gift and say, okay, I'm going to find someone else to work with, if you're really not being appreciated somewhere. So anyway, that was my story. And I tell my kids that story and any young person who'll listen, because I think it's an important one to realize that sometimes you've got to go around the mountain, find another open door.
That's interesting, because that is almost an example also of running into no and deciding, no, I'm not going to take that. No, that's not what I'm going to do. So good for you, Alison. So in addition to the book, which I encourage you to write, and I can't wait until it comes out, whenever that is, what other dreams do you have for what may be next that you haven't yet realized?
Well, I wish Nelson Mandela were still alive. He was on my want to interview list, and I missed that opportunity. I would love to interview Michelle Obama, Barack Obama. And I also, one day, I would love to write a novel. I was very inspired by Douglas Stewart's Shuggie Bain, which is a novel set in my hometown of Glasgow. And like that novel, I would like to explore the underbelly of Scotland. A lot of people think about Scotland and it's all, tartan and whiskey and beauty. And it is all that, but there's also an underbelly I would love to explore. There, the class system is still, or when I was growing up anyway, it was still very powerful there. Religious wars, the plight of the unions, public housing, gangs, violence. I could write about all these things from some of it firsthand experience. And also, again, going back to this mental health aspect, when I was growing up, there was a very closed attitude to mental health. And I would love to write about mental health in Scotland as it was when I was a kid there and as it is today, and how enlightened a lot of the West Coast of the United States is, and try and help that movement. I think we're moving in that direction in Scotland and in Europe in general about getting rid of the stigma of mental health. But I think I would love to help accelerate that movement so that, if you're seeing a therapist, it's not a big deal. And I've used the opportunity on live BBC World Service contributions. I'm on a show which is live for a whole hour, and the conversation can go in any direction. And any opportunity I have, I've talked about the fact that, I sometimes see a therapist and it's not a stigma, and it's such a positive. It's like going to see a physical therapist if you break your knee. There are times when psychologists can really help you address things, and sweeping traumas under the carpet is not a good idea.
That reminds me, I don't remember how long ago this was or who I said it to, but I remember saying to somebody at one point, I don't know that I've known any adult worth knowing who hasn't seen a therapist at one point or another. So,
yes, I love that. I love that.
And I think it's true. I mean, we all have our stuff growing up, and the sooner we can get rid of some of it, the more successful in all ways will be. So that's interesting, Alison, because you can write a novel in such a way that it's a novel, it's a novel. I just finished reading The State of Terror by Hillary Clinton and Louise Penny. And I was fascinated by it because I thought Hillary Clinton could include a lot of stuff in here that she might not have been able to include any other way, because this is a novel, so you can do a lot in a novel. So
yes, that's so true. Very true.
When you leave this earth, you talk about being dead and buried and your children doing wonderful things. What do you most hope to be remembered for?
Well, like I said, I can't say enough good things about my kids. I think I will be remembered as the mother of Lewis and Tanara. And also, I think as the strong woman behind my husband's success. He's a GPS, written the book on GPS. So I like to think I've, helped contribute to that as, behind the scenes. And also, people have commented on my interview with Elon Musk as the person who helped humanize Elon Musk, because I think I interviewed him almost 10 years ago, but a lot of people have said it's a timeless interview because it's really about the man, not the bravado, sharp talking, kind of hard talking businessman. It's really about Elon Musk and his humanity, his humility, his quirky sense of humor, his emotion. He actually came close to crying 3 times with me. And I think because I really tapped in, he opened up. People tend to open up to me. So I like to think that, I think Elon Musk gets a lot of bad rap. I mean, he's a rule breaker. He takes on the establishment, and that's how he has succeeded as an entrepreneur. But I think a lot of people think, oh, he's just that. He's just a rule breaker and, makes his team work really, really hard. And I think that's all true. But I think there is a softer side to Elon Musk. And I'm kind of proud of that interview that he revealed that. And some of his inner circle gave me feedback on that interview and said, you really showed the world the real Elon Musk that they know and love. And so I'm kind of proud of that one.
It would be fun for you to do one with him now and see the difference in the passage of time. As you're describing him, I don't know if this is accurate at all, but I felt as if some similarities between him and Steve Jobs. And I don't know if anybody's made that comparison. They probably have, but I hadn't actually thought of it before.
Yes, I talked to him during the interview about Steve Jobs, and he said that Steve Jobs was very rude to him, super rude to him. He didn't go into specifics. He was too much of a gentleman, but he said it wasn't like I went up and was hanging on to him. He was introduced to Steve Jobs by Larry Page, of Google, and still Steve Jobs snubbed him. So I think they're very different people. Yeah, but let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, now I guess as you're describing things about Elon Musk, I mean, those kinds of things have been said about Steve Jobs, and the opposite have been said about him too. I mean, so interesting. We are complex beings, that's for sure. So thank you so much, Alison. This has been delightful. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Yeah, so I'd invite them to either go to freshdialogues.com and use the contact tab and write to me there, or even better, just connect with me on LinkedIn, Alison van Diggelen.
Great, thank you. So that's our time today. Please join me again. You can find our Prime Spark podcasts on every major outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at www.primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Alison van Diggelen. You can contact her on freshdialogues.com or on LinkedIn. So thank you for being with us. Take care. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on Prime Spark. With each episode, Sarah Hart brings you conversations that inspire, celebrate, and empower women over 55. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes about remarkable, experienced women, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com. This podcast is also available at Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. The second women's revolution is here, and we hope that you use the insights you've gained here to fuel the spark that will ignite your way forward, illuminate your path, and reflect your gifts in the world.
Have you ever asked yourself this question? Why is it so hard to make a buck? I know I have. Hi, I'm Sandra Yancey, founder and CEO of eWomen Network. What I have discovered after going from the brink of bankruptcy to running a multi-million-dollar award-winning business is this. You can't build $1 million dream hanging around minimum wage mindsets. My mission is 1 million women entrepreneurs generating $1 million in annual revenue. So here's what I've done. I've created the mother of all entrepreneur success programs that you can access online on your time. It's called Monetize Me Now. It's a 7-module online course that is 100% my success formula, covering mindset, mission, management, motivation, marketing, and measure. Come on, take my hand and I'll show you the way to learn to earn flowing revenue for your business. Visit monetizemenow.com for details. Calling all speakers, eWomen Network has speaking engagements all over North America that must be filled. Are you a gifted messenger, author, expert, or successful entrepreneur that can help women entrepreneurs grow their businesses? Our mission is to help 1 million fulfilled women each achieve $1 million in annual revenue. If you're a speaker that can help women prosper, go to eWomenNetwork.com and sign up as a pro member of our Speakers Network. That's eWomenNetwork.com. Thanks for listening. This is the EWN Podcast Network.